Maya Johnson lived a quiet and simple life in Atlanta. She woke up early every morning, made herself a cup of coffee, and went for a run before most people even opened their eyes. To her neighbors, she was just another hardworking woman trying to live peacefully. She volunteered at a local youth center, helped kids with fitness training, and always greeted everyone with a calm smile. No one could have guessed that behind that gentle smile was a woman who had once seen the darkest sides of war. A woman who had worn the uniform of a Navy SEAL, one of the most elite forces in the world. Maya didn't talk much about her past. She told people she used to work for the military, but that was all. The truth was much deeper. For over a decade, she had served her country in dangerous missions overseas. Missions that were so secret that even her closest family members never knew the details. She had seen betrayal, sacrifice, and loss, but after one mission went terribly wrong, Maya decided it was time to leave that life behind. She wanted peace, not more battles. When she returned to the United States, she moved to Atlanta under a new name. The government helped her start fresh. She rented a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, far from any military base or old connections. It was her chance to live like an ordinary person. No uniforms, no weapons, no secrets. She found comfort in simple things: early morning jogs, teaching fitness classes, and reading books about mindfulness and healing. At first, it was hard for her to adjust. She wasn't used to silence. In the military, there were always sounds: helicopters, commands, gunfire, the noise of movement and urgency. Civilian life felt too quiet, almost strange. But slowly, she began to love it. She loved walking her dog in the park, drinking coffee at a small cafe, and talking to the kind old lady who lived next door. She felt like she was finally becoming someone new, someone free. Even though Maya tried to live like an ordinary person, some habits never left her. She always sat facing the door whenever she was in a restaurant. She noticed small details: who walked in, what they carried, what tone they used. Her mind was trained to spot danger. Her instincts were sharp, and even though she rarely needed them, they never faded. People in the neighborhood admired her discipline. She was polite but mysterious. Some neighbors wondered why she always carried herself with such strength. Straight posture, confident steps, and calm eyes that seemed to have seen everything. Kids at the youth center adored her. She trained them not just to be strong, but to be kind and respectful. She always said, "Strength isn't about fighting. It's about knowing when not to." Those words came from her heart, from all the things she had seen in her old life. Sometimes, late at night when the world outside was asleep, Maya sat by her window and looked at the city lights. Memories would come back: her team, her missions, the faces of people she couldn't save. She missed her comrades, but she also felt guilty for surviving when some didn't. She promised herself she would live in a way that honored them, by helping others, by being kind, and by never losing her discipline. One evening, after finishing her shift at the gym, she walked home through the quiet streets. She noticed a police car parked near a store but didn't think much of it. Police activity was normal in that area. She passed by with a smile, holding her bag and listening to music. To anyone watching, she looked like just another woman heading home after work. No one could have imagined the life she had lived or the strength she carried inside. Her apartment was small but cozy. Pictures of the ocean hung on the walls, reminders of her Navy days. A few medals and plaques were hidden in a box under her bed. She didn't display them. They reminded her of things she preferred not to talk about. She wanted her home to be peaceful, a place where no one would think of violence or war. Every Sunday, she visited a small church nearby. She wasn't deeply religious, but she found comfort in the quiet prayers and the sense of community. People respected her calm presence. The pastor once said, "Maya has a warrior's heart, but she carries it with grace." It was true. She was both strong and gentle, powerful yet humble. Maya had no idea that her peaceful life was about to be shattered. She didn't know that her skills, her past, and her strength would soon be tested again. For now, she was simply living each day in gratitude, thinking the hardest parts of her life were behind her. That night, as she sat on her balcony, a gentle breeze brushed her face. She smiled softly, whispering to herself, "This is the life I fought for." She believed she had finally escaped the shadows of her past, but fate had other plans. Somewhere out there, corruption was brewing, and soon it would come crashing into her quiet world. Maya closed her eyes, unaware that the peace she had built so carefully was about to be destroyed. The woman who once led secret missions was about to become the target of one. But for now, she slept peacefully, completely oblivious to the storm that was coming her way. Would you like me to continue with part 2, The Wrong Place at the Wrong Time, in the same simple and engaging storytelling style, around 800 words too? You said, start with part 2, more unique. ChatGPT said, sure, here's part 2. The Wrong Place at the Wrong Time, written in simple English, told in a cinematic and emotional third-person style, about 800 words long and completely unique and engaging, continuing smoothly from where part 1 ended. That morning began like any other for Maya Johnson. The sun rose slowly over Atlanta, painting the city in soft gold. Maya tied her shoelaces, grabbed her gym bag, and smiled at her reflection in the mirror. Another peaceful day, she whispered. She had no idea that peace was about to vanish. After finishing her morning fitness class at the community center, Maya decided to stop by a small grocery store on her way home. She was humming a quiet tune, pushing her cart down the aisle, when she noticed something strange outside through the glass doors. 2 police cars parked at odd angles, lights flashing, but no sirens. Something about the scene didn't feel right. Her instincts, the same instincts that had saved her life many times overseas, kicked in instantly. She moved closer to the window, pretending to check her phone while observing what was happening. Outside, 3 police officers were roughly handling a young man, maybe in his early 20s. He was scared, confused, and shouting that he hadn't done anything. One officer slammed him against the car while another searched his backpack. Maya felt a sharp twist in her chest. It wasn't her business, she told herself. She was just an ordinary woman now, not a Navy SEAL. But then she saw something that froze her in place. One of the officers slipped a small bag of white powder into the young man's pocket when no one was looking. Her breath caught. She blinked twice to make sure she wasn't imagining it. But she wasn't. She knew exactly what she saw. Years of intelligence work had trained her to notice small details, and there was no mistaking this one. That wasn't law enforcement. That was corruption. She quietly pulled out her phone and began recording. Her hands were steady, her heart racing. She captured everything. The officer planting evidence, the others pretending to find it, the fake outrage, the shouting. She felt anger rising inside her, but she stayed calm. She knew better than to intervene directly. In her world, sometimes proof was more powerful than confrontation. The young man was handcuffed, crying out that it wasn't his. The officers ignored him. One of them noticed Maya through the glass for a split second. Their eyes met. It was a brief moment, but one that would change everything. Maya turned away quickly, pretending to browse some fruits. Her pulse was pounding in her ears. She waited until the police cars drove off before she left the store. Outside, she noticed other people had seen the arrest too, but no one had recorded it. Only her. That evening, back in her apartment, she replayed the video again and again. The evidence was clear. The faces were visible. She thought about sending it to the news or the police department's internal affairs. But then she hesitated. She knew how deep corruption could go. Sometimes exposing it meant putting yourself in danger. Still, she couldn't let injustice slide. Maya decided to upload the video anonymously to a community watchdog page online. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. People were outraged. Comments poured in, accusing the officers of abuse and demanding justice. Local news channels picked it up the next morning, blurring the faces but keeping the story alive. Maya watched quietly, hoping that would be the end of it. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't be that simple. People like those officers didn't just sit quietly when they were exposed. 2 days later, she noticed a black sedan parked across from her building. It was there in the morning when she went jogging, and still there at night when she came home. The same car. No one got out. No one moved. She brushed it off at first, but her instincts whispered otherwise. She had lived through too many ambushes to ignore the feeling of being watched. That night, she double-checked her locks and kept her phone beside her bed. The next morning, when she went outside, the car was gone. She told herself she was just overthinking. She smiled, greeting her neighbors as if nothing was wrong. But the smile faded when she saw 2 uniformed officers waiting near her door. "Ms. Johnson?" one of them asked. "We'd like to ask you a few questions about a recent incident downtown." Her heart sank. The tone was polite, but she recognized that look. It wasn't curiosity. It was control. She nodded calmly. Of course. What's this about? They claimed they were investigating a false video that had been spread online. A video that damaged the reputation of good officers. Maya stayed polite, pretending to be confused. I don't know anything about that, she said softly. The officers smiled, but it wasn't friendly. We'll be in touch, one said. When they left, Maya stood in silence for a long time. Her phone buzzed and a message from an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. Her stomach tightened. She deleted the message immediately, but the meaning stayed with her. She wasn't just a witness anymore. She was a target. That night she sat by her window again, watching the quiet street below. The city lights flickered, and for the first time in years she felt that old familiar tension in her chest. The feeling before a mission, before a storm. She knew trouble was coming, and this time it wasn't on foreign soil. It was right here in her own city. But the corrupt cops didn't know the truth. They thought Maya Johnson was just an ordinary woman with a phone. They had no idea she was a high-ranking Navy SEAL, trained for moments exactly like this, and soon they would regret ever crossing her path. The morning air felt heavier than usual. Maya Johnson woke up before sunrise, as always, but something in the air didn't feel right. Her instincts, the ones she had tried to silence since leaving the Navy, were whispering again. That quiet warning she had learned to trust during missions. She brushed it off, made her coffee, and tried to focus on her normal routine. But her peace was already breaking apart piece by piece. For 2 weeks after the video went viral, the city buzzed with anger. People demanded justice, asking for the officers in the clip to be suspended. News outlets replayed the footage endlessly, showing the same moment, the exact second when one officer slipped the bag into the young man's pocket. The police department called it a misunderstanding. But everyone knew what it really was. Corruption caught on camera, and while the world was focused on the scandal, the officers behind it were quietly planning revenge. It started small. One evening, when Maya returned home from work, her apartment door was slightly open. She froze. The air inside was still, too still. Her training took over. Silent steps, controlled breathing, scanning the corners. No one was there. But something had changed. A few papers were out of place. Her bookshelf had been moved slightly, and her laptop, which she always left closed, was open. Someone had been inside. Maya didn't call the police. She didn't trust them anymore. Instead, she checked every inch of her apartment, making sure nothing obvious was missing. Everything looked normal, but deep down she knew this was only the beginning. Whoever had come in wanted her to know it. They were warning her. 2 nights later, the real nightmare began. Maya came home from her evening run to find 4 police cars parked outside her building. Blue and red lights flashed across her windows. Curious neighbors stood outside whispering. As she approached, one officer pointed at her and shouted, "That's her!" Before she could speak, 2 officers grabbed her arms and twisted them behind her back. She didn't resist, not yet. "What's going on?" she asked calmly, her voice steady. "You're under arrest, ma'am," one officer said coldly. "We have a warrant to search your home." "For what?" she asked, but no one answered. They pushed her inside as other officers began tearing through her apartment, pulling out drawers, flipping furniture, and opening her closets. Within minutes, one of them shouted, "Got it," and held up a bag filled with drugs. Another pulled a small pistol from under her bed, a gun she had never seen before. Maya's blood ran cold. She watched in disbelief as the officers smirked at each other. "Looks like we found our supplier," one of them said mockingly. The neighbors gasped from the hallway. Phones recorded everything. The woman who once trained for top-secret missions was being dragged out in handcuffs, accused of crimes she didn't commit. At the police station, the interrogation room was cold and silent. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above her. Across the table sat Detective Barnes, the same man she had seen in the viral video planting evidence. He leaned forward, smiling without warmth. "You should have stayed out of things you don't understand," he said quietly. "Now look where that got you." Maya stared at him, expressionless. "You framed me," she said evenly. "You know this isn't real," Barnes chuckled. "Everyone's real when we say they are." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were staged photos of Maya standing next to supposed drug dealers, all digitally altered. It was a clean setup, organized and meant to destroy her completely. Still, she didn't break. Years of Navy training had taught her one thing: stay calm when your enemies think they've won. "I'm sure the truth will come out," she said softly. Barnes's smile faded. Not this time. They booked her, fingerprinted her, and threw her into a holding cell. She sat on the cold metal bench, her mind racing. Every part of her training told her not to panic. She went over every detail, every step, every face she'd seen in the past week. It all connected now. The car that followed her, the open door, the message that warned her to stay quiet. It wasn't paranoia. It was a plan. Outside the station, news reporters were already broadcasting the story. Local woman arrested in major drug case. Same woman linked to viral police video. The world believed what they saw. The story had flipped overnight. The hero had become the villain. Inside the cell, Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She remembered her old commanding officer's words. When they corner you, they think it's over. That's when you start fighting back. She knew she couldn't rely on the justice system, not when it was filled with the same people who wanted her silenced. She had to rely on herself. Her mind was her best weapon now. That night, as the station grew quiet, Maya looked through the small barred window. The moonlight hit her face and she whispered to herself, "They made one mistake." She smiled faintly, her eyes fierce and steady. "They think I'm just a victim." The sound of the metal door clanging shut echoed through the narrow hallway as Maya Johnson was led into the county jail. Her wrists were cuffed, her uniform replaced with a faded orange jumpsuit, and her name, Maya Johnson, now sat beside a number printed on a plastic wristband. The same people who had once respected her now stared at her like she was dangerous. It didn't matter that she was innocent. The label of criminal was louder than the truth. The cell was small, gray concrete walls, a steel bed, and a thin blanket that smelled of bleach. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes blank but her mind alert. She could hear other inmates shouting down the hall, the clanging of gates, the heavy footsteps of guards. It was chaos, but to Maya it sounded like old times, grind like being back in a war zone. She had lived through worse, but this was different. This wasn't an enemy on foreign soil. This was her own country, the same system she had once sworn to protect, turning against her. Within days, the story spread everywhere. "Community hero turned criminal," read one headline. "Woman behind viral police video arrested in drug bust." Read another. The media painted her as a liar, saying she fabricated evidence to frame good officers. Her neighbors avoided her name. The youth center where she volunteered removed her photo from their wall. Everyone who once smiled at her now looked away. In the Navy, Maya had faced bombs, bullets, and betrayal, but this kind of isolation cut deeper. She wasn't being attacked by weapons. She was being destroyed by lies. During her first week in jail, the guards treated her with suspicion. They'd seen the news too. To them, she wasn't a soldier or a hero. She was a criminal who had turned against law enforcement. Some mocked her quietly. "Guess being tough didn't save you, huh?" One muttered during roll call. She didn't respond. She just stared ahead, calm as ever. Inside the cell block, inmates whispered her name. Some recognized her from TV. Others wanted to test her strength. But when one inmate tried to provoke her, she stopped him with a single look. Steady, unflinching, the kind that came from years of battlefield experience. No one bothered her after that. At night, when the lights dimmed, Maya lay awake staring at the ceiling. She replayed every moment in her mind. The store, the video, the warning text, the raid. Every detail formed a puzzle and she was determined to solve it. Her instincts told her the setup went deeper than just a few bad cops. Someone higher was pulling the strings. Someone powerful. One afternoon, a lawyer came to see her, a young man assigned by the court. He looked nervous, flipping through her case file. "Ms. Johnson," he began softly, "the evidence against you is substantial. They found drugs and an unlicensed firearm in your home." She looked at him steadily. "Planted," she said. He hesitated. "Maybe, but proving that will be hard. There are signed witness statements from officers who say they saw you with illegal items. The judge already denied bail." "I'm sorry." Maya leaned forward, her voice low but strong. "Listen to me. Those officers are corrupt. I caught them framing someone else. That's why they're doing this to me. If you want the truth, start there." The lawyer nodded slowly, but his eyes said he didn't fully believe her. She couldn't blame him. On paper, she looked guilty. Still, He promised to look into it. When he left, she knew she couldn't rely on him alone. That night, during dinner, she noticed a guard lingering by the door longer than usual. He wasn't one of the cruel ones. He was younger, quieter. When their eyes met, he looked away quickly, almost guilty. Later, during cell check, he slipped something under her blanket, a folded piece of paper. When the hallway was clear, Maya opened it. It read, "They know who you are. Stop pretending." Her heart froze. Nobody in the jail was supposed to know about her Navy background. Her record was sealed under her new identity. For someone to know meant one thing. Someone inside the system had accessed classified files. She stared at the note for a long time before burning it quietly with a match from her dinner tray candle. The smoke curled up and disappeared, but the message stayed with her. The next morning, the same guard avoided eye contact. Maya approached him subtly during breakfast. "Who told you that?" she asked under her breath. He didn't look up. "I don't know your story, but they're not done with you. They want something from you, or they want you gone." Then he walked away before she could say another word. That day, Maya realized she wasn't just being punished. She was being silenced. And whoever was behind it knew exactly who she was. That night, while the rest of the inmates slept, Maya sat up on her bed, her back straight, her breathing steady. The fluorescent lights hummed above. Her eyes hardened with determination. She whispered to herself, "They think I'm broken." A slow, confident smile crossed her face. They have no idea who they're dealing with. The woman the world now saw as a fallen hero was quietly preparing for her next move. Her fall from grace wasn't the end. It was the start of a comeback no one would see coming. And for the first time since her arrest, the warrior inside her began to wake up again. The night was cold and quiet inside the jail, but Maya Johnson couldn't sleep. Her eyes were open, fixed on the dim light flickering through the small window above her bed. Every sound, the clang of metal, the distant footsteps of guards, the murmurs from other cells, felt sharper, louder. But inside Maya's mind there was silence, the kind of silence that comes before a storm. For weeks she had been patient. She'd watched, listened, and waited. But now, after the note slipped under her blanket, "They know who you are." Everything had changed. The mask she had worn, the quiet civilian life she had built, was gone. Her instincts as a Navy SEAL, buried deep under years of peace, began to rise again. She was done being afraid. The next morning, she sat in the cafeteria with her tray untouched. Her mind wasn't on the tasteless food, and it was on strategy. She studied every detail. Which guards switched shifts, who carried the keys where the cameras were positioned, and which inmates talked to which officers. Most people would see chaos. She saw a system, one that could be understood, mapped, and eventually beaten. Later that day, when the younger guard, the one who had left her the note, passed by her cell, Maya spoke quietly without looking up. "I need to know who gave that message," she said. He froze, glancing around. "You didn't hear it from me," he muttered, sliding a folded paper onto her tray. "Someone in the precinct leaked your real file. You used to be in the Navy, right? A SEAL?" Maya didn't answer, but her eyes said enough. He swallowed hard. "Then you already know what that means. They're scared of you. They're covering something up." She nodded slightly. "Then let's make them more scared." That night, when the lights went out, Maya began to work. She tore the edge of her blanket into thin strips, braided them together, and tied them into a strong cord, something she'd learned during survival training. She wasn't escaping, not yet. She just wanted to be ready. In the following days, she observed patterns. 2 guards swapped shifts at exactly the same time every night. One officer, Barnes, the corrupt detective who'd framed her, visited the jail once a week, checking her cell personally. He didn't speak to her, but she could feel his hatred. Every visit reminded her why she had to fight back. Meanwhile, outside the jail, the story was still burning through the media. Some people had started questioning the police narrative. A few online voices asked why the body cam footage from her arrest hadn't been released. The truth was trying to surface, but the system was strong. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened. A man in a dark suit arrived to see her. He wasn't her lawyer. He wasn't from the local police. When he showed his badge, the guard stiffened and opened the door immediately. He introduced himself as Agent Robert Hale from Naval Intelligence. Maya recognized the emblem on his ID. It was real. He sat across from her in the small visitation room, his expression serious. "Lieutenant Commander Johnson," he said quietly, using her old rank. "It's been a long time." Maya stayed calm. "That name doesn't exist anymore." "It does now," he replied. "You've made quite a mess down here," she raised an eyebrow. "A mess I didn't start," he nodded slowly. "We know. The department has been monitoring your situation. When that video went viral, it got the attention of the wrong people, and some very powerful ones. These cops, they're connected to something bigger: drug trafficking, money laundering, and a network of dirty officers protecting each other." Maya leaned forward. "So you know I was framed?" "Yes," Hale said. "But clearing your name isn't simple. If we expose them without proof, you'll just disappear into their lies again. You've seen what they're capable of." Her voice was calm but firm. "Then give me what I need. I can finish this." He studied her face for a moment, the quiet confidence, the discipline in her eyes. "You haven't changed," he said. "Still a soldier." "I'm not a soldier anymore," she replied. "I'm just someone who wants the truth." Hale slid a thin envelope across the table. "Inside is a contact. Someone inside the department who's willing to help. When you get out, find them. We'll handle the rest from the shadows." "When I get out?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "You're not staying here much longer." The next day, without explanation, Maya's charges were quietly reduced. Her court date was postponed indefinitely. A week later, she was released due to insufficient evidence. It was clear someone had pulled strings, but Maya knew it wasn't over, not even close. She walked out of the jail wearing the same clothes she'd been arrested in, her head high, her eyes cold. The world looked the same, but everything inside her had changed. The old Maya, the quiet, gentle woman who just wanted peace, was gone. In her place stood Lieutenant Commander Maya Johnson, the woman who had led missions through war zones and survived the impossible. As she stepped into the sunlight, she whispered to herself, "They took my freedom, my name, and my peace." She paused, her voice steady as steel. "Now I'm taking back my justice." The awakening was complete. Maya wasn't just free, she was reborn, and the people who had set her up were about to discover what happens when you try to destroy a Navy SEAL. The first thing Maya Johnson did after leaving the jail was breathe, a long, deep breath of freedom. But it didn't feel the way she imagined. The air outside didn't smell like peace. It smelled like unfinished business. She walked through the city with a calm face, but inside her chest burned a storm. People passed her on the sidewalk with curious glances, some recognizing her from the news, some whispering her name. To them, she was the woman who had gone to jail. But they didn't know the truth. They didn't know what she had endured or who she truly was. She had no plans to disappear quietly. Not this time. That night, Maya checked into a cheap motel on the outskirts of Atlanta. The walls were cracked and the air conditioner rattled, but it gave her something she hadn't had in months: privacy. She locked the door, drew the curtains, and emptied her small duffel bag onto the bed. A few clothes, a prepaid phone, and the envelope Agent Hale had given her. Inside was a single name written on a torn piece of paper: Detective Laura Mills, Internal Affairs. Maya memorized the number, then burned the paper in the sink. Before contacting anyone, she needed to rebuild herself. The first step was regaining her strength. For 3 days straight, she trained: push-ups, squats, shadow combat, endurance drills. The body that had softened during her months in jail began to remember. Every breath, every movement reawakened the warrior within her. But revenge wasn't her goal. Justice was. On the fourth night, she called the number. A woman's voice answered. "Detective Mills speaking." Maya spoke carefully. "You don't know me, but we have the same enemy." There was silence. Then a cautious reply. "Are you the one they framed?" "Yes," Maya said. "And I have proof they've done it before." They met in an underground parking lot the next evening. Mills was younger than Maya expected, with sharp eyes and the look of someone who'd been fighting her own silent battles inside a corrupt department. She didn't waste time on introductions. "I've been collecting files for months," Mills said, handing Maya a flash drive. "Barnes and his team are part of a network. They protect dealers who pay them and silence anyone who threatens to expose them." Maya listened, her jaw tightening. "Then we bring them down. Every one of them." Mills hesitated. "It's not that easy. They have allies in the system. Judges, lawyers, even people in internal affairs. One wrong move and you'll disappear again. Maya smiled faintly. They already tried that. Over the next week, Maya and Mills worked in secret. Mills provided the data. Maya provided the strategy. Using her military background, Maya analyzed patrol patterns, communication channels, and digital footprints. Every clue they uncovered revealed more rot inside the police department. Then one night, while studying files in the motel room, Maya found a name she hadn't expected. Captain Ray Doyle, the same commanding officer who had signed off on her false arrest warrant. He wasn't just part of the operation. He was leading it. Maya stared at the name, her eyes dark with determination. He's the head of the snake, she whispered. The next phase was riskier. They couldn't go through the system that was compromised. So Maya decided to hit them where they were weakest, their secrets. With Mills' help, she traced their illegal transactions to a warehouse in South Atlanta, a front for laundering drug money. Late one night, dressed in black, Maya slipped into the shadows outside the warehouse. The moonlight barely touched her figure as she moved with silent precision, the same grace she once used during covert Navy operations. Inside, she found what she needed: financial ledgers, burner phones, and video recordings of meetings between officers and dealers. Proof. Real proof. As she photographed the evidence, she heard footsteps. 2 guards were patrolling nearby. She ducked behind a stack of crates, waiting. When one guard walked past, she moved swiftly. One strike to the neck, one sweep of the leg, and he fell without a sound. The second guard turned too late. Within seconds, both were unconscious. Maya worked quickly, uploading the files to a secure drive and sending copies to Detective Mills. When she slipped out through the side door, her heart was steady. She was in her element again, calm, sharp, unstoppable. By dawn, the entire corrupt network had been exposed online. Mills had leaked the files anonymously to several independent journalists. The evidence spread like wildfire: police reports, hidden camera footage, transaction records. The internet was flooded with the truth. Within 24 hours, the city was in chaos. Arrests began. Officers who once strutted proudly were dragged out in cuffs. Captain Doyle vanished before anyone could find him. Watching the news from her motel room, Maya didn't smile. She just sat quietly, her face unreadable. Justice had begun, but it wasn't finished. That night, she received a message on her prepaid phone. "You shouldn't have come after us. This isn't over." She looked at the text and replied simply, "Neither is my fight." She deleted the message and set the phone down. Then she looked at her reflection in the cracked mirror. Calm, fierce, unbroken. For the first time in a long while, Maya felt like herself again. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't running, she was fighting back, and this time, the whole world was about to see what happened when a high-ranking Navy SEAL took justice into her own hands. The sun had barely risen over Atlanta when the city woke to chaos. News stations flashed breaking headlines every hour. Corrupt officers exposed in widespread scandal. And social media was flooded with video clips, evidence files, and secret recordings. The entire city buzzed with shock and anger. The truth was out. For the first time, people could see exactly how deep the corruption went. Officers taking bribes, planting evidence, and silencing innocent people. The files leaked online were undeniable, filled with the kind of proof no lawyer or politician could spin away. And behind that storm of justice was one woman whose name was being whispered again: Maya Johnson. Her face returned to the news, but this time the tone was different. Sources say the woman once accused of drug crimes may have been framed by the same officers now under investigation, one anchor reported. Was she the key to uncovering one of the largest police corruption scandals in the state's history? In a small apartment far from downtown, Maya watched the reports in silence. She sat on the floor, her laptop open, the glow of the screen reflecting in her calm, steady eyes. Every headline, every photo, every confession from arrested officers, it was all validation. But she didn't celebrate. She knew this wasn't over. The main target, Captain Ray Doyle, was still missing. Detective Mills called her later that day. "We've traced Doyle's movements," she said over the phone. "He's not in the city anymore. He's hiding somewhere near the docks, and he's not alone. Half the department's still loyal to him." Maya's response was steady. "Then that's where I'm going." "Maya," Mills warned, "you've already done enough. Let the feds handle it. But Maya had seen what happened when the system handled things and why they buried them. And she wasn't about to let that happen again. That night, rain poured over the city, washing the streets clean as Maya moved through the shadows near the docks. The air smelled of salt and metal. Cargo ships sat still in the darkness, and far in the distance, she saw a faint light from an abandoned warehouse. She moved quietly, her steps silent on the wet ground. Through a broken window, she could see them, Doyle and two other officers she recognized. They were arguing, pacing back and forth. Papers and cash were scattered across a table. She listened from the shadows. "We need to get out of the country," one of them said nervously. "Everything's falling apart." Doyle slammed his fist on the table. "We don't run. We fix this." That woman, Johnson, she started this. We end it with her. Maya's jaw tightened. He still didn't realize she was already there. She waited until the men separated, one moving toward the back door. Then, with the precision of years of training, she slipped inside. Her movements were fluid, deliberate, no hesitation. The first officer never saw her coming. A quick sweep of her arm and he was unconscious before he hit the floor. The second man turned, reaching for his gun, but Maya was faster. She disarmed him with a twist of her wrist, kicked the weapon away, and pinned him with one strike to the chest. Only Doyle remained. He spun around, his face going pale when he saw her standing there, calm, silent, and unshaken. "Maya Johnson," he hissed. "You don't know what you're doing." She stepped closer. "I know exactly what I'm doing. You think this changes anything?" Doyle sneered. "You think people like you can win? You're just—" He didn't finish. Maya tossed a folder onto the table. Inside were documents she'd recovered from the warehouse. Records of every bribe, every fake arrest, every deal he'd made. "This is over, Captain," she said quietly. "It's all out there. Every file, every transaction. You can't hide anymore." Doyle's eyes flickered with panic. He reached for his gun, but Maya had already drawn hers. "Don't," she warned. For a moment, time froze. Rain drummed on the roof and lightning flashed through the cracks in the walls. Then Doyle's hand fell away from his weapon. He knew he was beaten. Sirens echoed in the distance. Mills and her team were closing in. Maya lowered her gun, watching as Doyle stared at her with hatred and defeat. "You think they'll make you a hero for this?" he spat. "You'll always be one of us, broken by the system." Maya looked at him for a long moment before replying, "Maybe, but I'm still standing." When Mills and the agents burst in, they found Doyle cuffed on the floor and two officers unconscious beside him. Maya stood near the window, soaked in rain and silence. Mills approached her, her voice soft. "You did it, Maya. It's over." Maya shook her head. "No," she said quietly. "It's just beginning." Later, as dawn crept across the city, Maya walked along the empty street near the river. The storm had cleared and the first light touched her face. She finally felt the weight lifting, not completely gone, but lighter. The truth had come out. Her name would be cleared, but the scars of what happened would stay with her forever.